Rock. Right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
It's a new way to plan your day. Get the weather information you need from Marshall Cease and Heather Tesh, including your local forecast on the 8th. Tune into Your Weather Today, weekday mornings from 7 till 9 Eastern on the Weather Channel.
People are asked to stay off the streets of Washington, D.C. A powerful winter storm cripples the nation's capital as the heavy snow moves towards New York and Boston.
And Old Man Winter has his grip on New York City. I'm Kristen Dodd. I'll have a live report coming up.
Good morning and welcome to Weather Center, sponsored by Penske Auto Centers. I'm Cheryl Lemke.
And I'm Rick Griffin. Well, this winter storm is packing a punch along much of the East Coast. Some of you in North Carolina are dealing with more than 18 inches of snow, and the snow continues. I'll have more on the storm's effect in the southeast shortly. Right now, though, let's talk about the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, and Cheryl begins our storm coverage.
We are definitely tracking a major winter storm that continues to bear down on the East Coast. And it was this winter storm that first of all brought some icy conditions to the southeast this past weekend. And then yesterday the storm moved off the coast. It underwent some explosive development, and at that point some very heavy snow overtook the Carolinas. And now that heavy snow continues to spread its way northward right along the eastern seaboard. Well, it's been snowing nonstop this morning. Very heavy snow continues to come down for Baltimore, Arlington, Virginia, on into Washington, D.C. In fact, right now for D.C., a state of emergency has been declared. A really nasty time here. Both of the major airports have been shut down due to very heavy snow, which continues. And that snow spreading its way up towards Harrisburg. Heavy snow right now there, and it's still snowing very hard, too, for Philadelphia. And even back towards parts of the Northeast, very heavy snow as well. Places like Hartford, Danbury, Groton, Connecticut, heavy snow in progress. Snow spreading up to the Boston area and Providence. And even back towards the Big Apple, we've had this wintry mixture. At times this morning, some heavier snow, but now some freezing rain interspersed with that snowfall. And to give us a better idea about that wintry weather for the Big Apple this morning, we turn it over to Kristen Dodd, who's been in New York City. Good morning, Kristen.
Good morning, Cheryl. Over the past half hour, we've noticed a few changes here in New York City. We're getting more of a sleet-snow mix right now, so a little bit more of an icy consistency to what's coming down. Now, earlier we had very heavy snowfall here, and that caused plenty of problems on the roadways. Behind me is Grand Central Parkway, and you can see how the traffic right now is moving fairly well, but we have reports on other highways that is not the case, with a lot of accidents, cars skidding off the roadway and heading into the ditches. Beyond the road is LaGuardia Airport, and visibilities actually have lifted within the past hour. However, we still have reports that flights in and out of LaGuardia just are not happening. So delays are practically being shut down at this point. Also very long delays at JFK and in Newark. And if you had planned on flying from Raleigh, North Carolina up to LaGuardia on US Air, it's not going to happen, at least until 6 o'clock. All flights there are canceled. Now, I want to take a look just off to my left. Car just pulled in And you can tell here it's a little bit more of an icy consistency that is now piling up on the cars. Earlier we had the heavy snow, so now a bit more of the ice forming, so you definitely will have to start scraping the windows if you're just now heading out. Now with more on this winter storm, let's join our winter weather expert, Paul Kosin.
Thanks, Kristen. Well, the snowstorm continues at full force across the Washington, Baltimore metropolitan area. It's beginning to abate a little bit, or at least temporarily, in the New York City area. In Boston, you're going over to a mix of rain and snow as well. We'll see a continuation of the heavy snow conditions from Washington, D.C. up through Philadelphia, as well as through much of central Virginia, and that'll be moving up towards the northeast. This is the snow history as we see it right now. The violets are anywhere above 6 to 12 inches, so take a look at the amounts of snow we've already had. We're looking at a band of 6 to 12 inches across a wide variety of eastern Virginia, across eastern Maryland, and now into southeastern Pennsylvania and southern New Jersey. We'll see those amounts move up towards the northeast across eastern New York State. And let's take a quick look at the radars just to see what's going on right now. We're starting to see that strong western edge of the precipitation begin to fill in across the southeast. And so with that, we've seen the rain and snow mix change to snow now in Norfolk. And even though precipitation has lightened up along the eastern shore of Maryland and southern New Jersey, this filling in may start your snow up later again in the afternoon. But the focus of the snowfall will be right in this band, right in here, through Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, through New York, and we'll see that band continue off to the northeast. So a long period of heavy snow, again in Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, some mixed precipitation in New York, and perhaps a change back to more significant snow later in the day. Boston, you're going to see some heavy precipitation on the form of mixed precipitation with heavier snow to your west later on. Let's take a quick look now at the Washington area. Here again is our major snow band. We can see these elements wrapping into the east, feeding into this band that's right across the I-95 corridor. That area's got to be probably the hardest hit area we're going to see during the day. 1.5 feet of snow in Raleigh. We'll be seeing totals of 1 foot, possibly even more. Richmond up to Washington and Baltimore later today. So a major snowstorm, perhaps not as great amounts in Boston or New York, but when we're looking at Philadelphia, Washington, and Baltimore, you're going to have a historic event here on your hands. Let's go back to the studio right now.
This is really turning out to be a very devastating and a very dangerous winter storm, as we are still talking about pockets of locally heavy snow, not only for the nation's capital, but actually extending northward up towards around Manchester, New Hampshire. And besides the heavy snow, also some very strong winds. So when you combine the winds along with the snowfall, that spells considerable blowing and drifting snowfall, greatly reduced visibilities, almost blizzard conditions, and near whiteout conditions too for a few places. So again, traveling is simply not being recommended. Already today we've had some occasional gusts near 50 miles per hour and still some very stiff winds raking the Delmarva Peninsula and all the way back towards Long Island. We've had some wind gusts just shy of 40 miles per hour. Up and down the East Coast we have gale and storm warnings that remain in effect. And those strong winds are definitely driving down the wind chills for today. In fact, right now it feels like 5 degrees below zero for Pittsburgh, and it feels like 0 for Philadelphia. And we have some very cold wind chills too for New York City and Hartford all the way back towards Boston. And it will stay pretty chilly all day long. What can we expect through the afternoon? Our low still cranking up, still quite intense at this point, but it continues to ride up the coast. We'll still be seeing more snows today for D.C. and Philadelphia, although tapering off for the afternoon rush hour. And around the Boston area, it could get rather interesting. Again, we're expecting some frozen precipitation to be moving on in before we see that 3 inches of snow. So again, that will eventually turn over a little bit later on today. So a very wintry scene being painted throughout the entire Northeast. And again, with those wind chills, we are talking about low single numbers for those wind chills all day long. So a bitterly cold winter's day. And snowfall amounts still quite appreciable today, maybe 6 to 12 inches from D.C. all the way back towards the Berkshires. Now let's check out the weather for the south. Here's Rick.
Well, in the southeast, this storm has brought parts of the southeast, especially the Carolinas, to a standstill. In particular, central North Carolina, where Raleigh-Durham has received about 18 inches of snow so far, the biggest snowstorm since 1927. And if it's not already, this is probably going to be the record 24-hour snowfall in Raleigh-Durham, the old record 17.8 inches on March 2nd, 1927. Again, a debilitating storm in the south because in the counties of north central and central North Carolina, Roads are impassable. Trees and power lines have been knocked down by the heavy, wet, wind-driven, blowing and drifting snowfall, up to 18 inches so far. In some places, probably will total over 20 inches of snow before the storm ends. Otherwise, across the south, a fairly quiet Tuesday with high pressure, Arctic high pressure, the dominating weather feature, at least from Georgia back to the Mississippi River. It will be a little milder today in Texas and Oklahoma. So you can see the spinning storm system. The still widespread precipitation is just about all snow now in North Carolina, and still heavy at times, Raleigh, Durham to Fayetteville, and it's still snowing on the Atlantic Ocean beaches around Myrtle Beach and Wilmington, while the snow and rain have ended in Charleston and Columbia. By later on today, the storm moves northeast. The significant snows end, except for the mountains of western North Carolina and East Tennessee, with another 1 to 3 inches of snow for you. Atlanta, partly sunny and windy. 54, mostly sunny in New Orleans, partly sunny today, Houston 60, and a cool 49 in Dallas. Dallas now 40, Nashville 18, a chilly 51 in Miami. Orlando's got a wind chill, and Jacksonville too, 17 degrees. Cheryl?
The big story for the Midwest continues to be some very cold weather and some locally heavy lake effect snow. Let's check out the weather scene for the nation's heartland. And again, temperatures continue to plummet. Right now it's a mere 16 degrees for Minneapolis, 15 for Green Bay, and Chicago not a whole lot better either, sitting at 13. When you factor in those brisk northerly winds, we are once again talking about sub-zero wind chills. So please, if you do have to venture outside for today, wear several layers of warm clothes and really protect yourself against frostbite and hypothermia. As that colder air continues to plunge into place, we've had the snow breaking out this morning. Just some light amounts for Mason City and Cedar Rapids and Des Moines, Iowa. But there will be some appreciable snows around the Great Lakes area, maybe 6 to 12 inches for parts of Michigan. Just lighter amounts, though, for Detroit, maybe a light dusting, too, for Indianapolis, and more light snow possible for Cleveland. So definitely some wintry, snowy conditions for the Great Lakes. Meanwhile, a mix of clouds and sunshine, though, throughout the nation's midsection.
Well, we'll be telling you more about the West in just a moment. Just to give you a few details, there have been some record-setting rains in California and some heavy snows in the mountains. Stay with us on Storm Watch coming up in a few minutes. We'll talk more about the unsettled weather in the western half of the country.
In the meanwhile, though, we'll check out your local conditions, and then we'll be back shortly. We'll check out traveling conditions from coast to coast. Stay with us.